The young alien princess sat on her throne, her heart heavy with uncertainty. Her sharp, pale blue eyes glistened in the light of her royal chamber, but the thoughts swirling inside her head dulled the beauty of her face. Her father, the king, stood before her, his stern gaze fixed on her. His voice was unwavering as he spoke. "Your marriage has been arranged, daughter. It is for the good of our people." The princess stiffened. She had always known that her royal duties would come with sacrifices, but this was something different. She had never expected to be told that she was to marry someone from another planet, especially not a human. The humans were primitive, emotional, and far beneath the sophisticated ways of her race. She couldn't understand why her family had decided that this was the best course of action. Why a human? Why now? Her voice trembled with disbelief. "Father, I cannot marry him. He's just a human. I don't even know him." The king's expression remained cold, his decision final. "This is not a matter of choice, daughter. The alliance between our planet and theirs is crucial. It will ensure peace and prosperity for our people. You will do this for your kingdom." The princess felt a sharp pain in her chest. She had no say in this marriage. It was a command from her father, one she could not ignore. She had always been a dutiful daughter, but this felt different. She wasn't ready to marry a stranger, especially someone she considered beneath her. The thought of spending her life with a human made her stomach turn. Her mother, standing silently beside the king, placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "It is for the greater good, my dear. Your people need you to lead them, and this union will strengthen our position. You will not be alone, and the human will treat you with respect." The princess looked down at her hands, clenching them tightly. She felt trapped. She was expected to leave her home and her people, to travel to Earth, and marry a man she knew nothing about. She had heard rumors about humans, how they were unpredictable and full of emotions she didn't understand. What could she possibly have in common with someone like that? Her father's voice interrupted her thoughts. "The preparations will begin immediately. You will meet him soon. Do not disappoint us." As her father and mother left the room, the princess remained seated, staring at the cold, empty walls around her. She longed for the freedom she once had, but she knew it was slipping away. Her duty called, and she had no choice but to obey. Deep down, she wondered what her life would be like on Earth. Would she ever find peace in this strange new world? Or would she forever be a pawn in a game that was not her own? The princess stood up, her resolve hardening. She would face whatever came next with dignity. But inside, a storm was brewing. She could only hope that the human she was to marry would not be as impossible to understand as her own emotions were in this moment. The day had arrived. The princess, dressed in her finest attire, stood at the edge of the spaceport, waiting. She had never been to Earth before, and the excitement of the unknown made her heart race. She tried to keep her emotions in check, but it was difficult. She couldn't deny the nervous flutter in her chest. What would this human be like? The stories she had heard about their species were nothing but strange rumors and exaggerated tales. The air around her felt different, thicker, warmer. She could hear the sounds of human machinery buzzing nearby, and the scent of Earth filled her senses. It was earthy, rich with life, and completely unlike anything she had known. Her people's planet was cold, distant, and efficient. Earth, on the other hand, seemed alive in every possible way. The colors were more vivid, the sounds more intense, and the air itself seemed full of possibilities. A ship descended from the sky, cutting through the atmosphere with a smooth, controlled motion. It landed gracefully, the engine slowing until it was still, its sleek metallic body gleaming under the sun. The princess' heart thudded, the moment she had been dreading. And yet, somehow, anticipating, had arrived. The door of the ship opened, and out stepped the human. He was taller than she had expected, standing at least a head above most of the people she had seen on Earth so far. His dark hair was messy, as if he had just woken up, and his blue eyes shone with an unspoken determination. There was an air of confidence about him that was completely different from the timid, fearful man she had imagined. He didn't look like the kind of person who would bow to her or treat her as some distant ruler. For a moment, she felt speechless, just as the king had warned her she would be. His gaze met hers, and she saw no judgment or fear in his eyes, only curiosity and something deeper she couldn't quite place. He was wearing simple clothes, a shirt and pants, nothing regal or intimidating. She couldn't help but notice how comfortable he seemed, how he moved as though he belonged here on earth, confident and free. The princess took a step forward, her royal guards close behind her, and nodded stiffly. "I am the princess of my people. I assume you know why I am here." The human smiled, his expression warm, though there was a glint of nervousness in his eyes. "I do," he said simply. "I'm here to meet you, princess, but more importantly, to try and make the best of this situation. I hope we can both make it work." His voice was soft, but strong, and the way he spoke didn't carry the arrogance she expected. She had expected a conqueror, someone who would look at her as though she were a prize to be won. But instead, this human seemed almost genuine. His words took her by surprise. The princess wasn't sure what to think, but her heart seemed to race faster, for reasons she didn't fully understand. She had heard that humans were emotional, but this man didn't seem to fit the description at all. He wasn't wild or unpredictable. He was calm, composed, and very much in control of his emotions. But why was he so different from everything she had heard? "I don't want this," the princess said quietly, feeling the need to be honest. "I don't understand why this has to happen." He nodded, not angry or defensive, but understanding. "Neither do I," he said softly. "But we'll figure it out together. We'll make our own path." The princess' thoughts swirled. This was not at all what she had expected. She was supposed to be the one in control, but here she was, feeling unsure and speechless in the face of a human who seemed far more complex than she had ever imagined. The princess stood in front of the human, still processing his words. The calm, understanding tone in his voice was not what she had expected. But no matter how sincere he seemed, she could not ignore the duty that weighed on her heart. Her people needed her to marry him, to secure the alliance that would bring peace between their worlds. But she wasn't ready to surrender her life to a man she didn't know, no matter how different he was from the stories. "I cannot do this," she said, her voice firm but laced with frustration. "I was forced into this marriage. It was not my choice." The human's expression softened, but there was no hint of anger in his eyes. He merely nodded as though he understood her struggle. "I didn't ask for this either," he said gently. "But I'm not going to force you into anything. You're not a prisoner, princess." The words struck her like a shockwave. She had always thought of herself as a prisoner of her royal duties, bound by the expectations of her people. To hear him speak so freely about her choice, as though she had any control over this situation, was unsettling. She wasn't used to being given such freedom, especially not by someone like him. Someone she had been told to fear, to keep at a distance. "I'm not a prisoner," the princess repeated, almost to herself. It was a foreign thought. "What choice do I have? My people demand this marriage. There's no way around it." The human took a step closer, his posture relaxed but sincere. "I don't know what your people expect, but what I do know is that you don't have to marry me because of some agreement between worlds. We don't have to follow that path if you don't want to." Her heart skipped a beat. Was he really offering her a way out? She had heard so much about how the humans thought they were above everyone else, how they were self-centered and careless. But this man, this human, was showing her something entirely different. He wasn't acting like a conqueror or a ruler. He was acting like someone who truly wanted her to have a choice. "You don't understand," the princess said, her voice cracking slightly. "This is bigger than just me. It's about our worlds, our people, our future. If I don't do this, my people could be in danger." The human paused, looking at her with a thoughtful expression. "I understand," he said quietly. "But maybe we should find another way, one that doesn't have to tear you apart. There's always a way, princess. There's always another path." For the first time, the princess felt a flicker of hope, but it was fleeting. She couldn't just abandon her people, her duties. She had been raised to believe that her life was not her own, that her decisions were always for the greater good. Could she really defy everything she had been taught? Could she truly choose herself over the weight of her responsibilities? "I don't know if I can," she whispered, more to herself than to him. The human smiled gently, as though he understood the conflict raging inside her. "You don't have to know right now," he said. "We have time. Just remember, you're not alone in this. Whatever you decide, it's your choice." The princess felt something stir inside her. It was a feeling she had never allowed herself to experience before, the possibility of freedom. But with that possibility came the fear of what it might cost her. Days passed, and the princess couldn't stop thinking about her conversation with the human. His words had stayed with her, echoing in her mind like a whisper that wouldn't fade. She had never considered the possibility that she might have a choice in her own fate. But now that the thought had been planted in her heart, it grew, slowly but steadily, each passing hour making it harder for her to ignore. Every day, she spent more time with him. At first, it was awkward. She was still resistant, unwilling to open up fully. She had been taught her whole life that emotions and personal desires were secondary to duty, and the idea of questioning that had never crossed her mind before. But he was patient. He never pushed her, never demanded anything. He simply showed her a world full of experiences she never expected. One afternoon, they stood at the edge of a quiet forest near the human settlement. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky with soft orange and pink hues. The princess gazed out over the landscape, feeling both small and vast at the same time. She had never seen Earth in such a way, so simple, so raw, and yet so beautiful. "This place," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's unlike anything I've ever seen." The human, standing beside her, smiled gently. "Earth has its own kind of beauty. Sometimes it's easy to miss if you don't slow down and look." She turned to him, studying his face. For a moment, she saw not just the human she was supposed to marry, but a man, someone who understood the value of stillness, of living in the moment. Something shifted inside her, and she felt her walls start to crumble just a little. But with that shift came doubt. Could she really do this? Could she choose a life with him, a human, over the expectations of her people, her planet, her destiny? She was a princess. She had a duty that was bigger than herself. Her people relied on her to ensure their survival, to protect them. And yet, the thought of being forced into a marriage with a man she didn't love, someone she had been taught to view as inferior, made her stomach twist in discomfort. The human seemed to sense her turmoil. He turned to face her fully, his expression serious but warm. "I know this is difficult for you," he said quietly, "but I want you to know that I won't force you into anything. I'm not asking you to marry me because of your title or your people. I'm asking you to consider what you want." The princess swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her crown pressed down on her once again. The world was so much more complicated than she had ever imagined. She had always thought she knew what was best for her people, but now she wasn't so sure. "I don't know what I want," she admitted, her voice tinged with frustration. "I've never had the luxury of choosing for myself. I don't know how to do that." He nodded, his gaze softening. "It's okay not to have all the answers right away. You don't need to decide everything now. Just take the time you need. I'm here for you, no matter what." The princess felt a pang in her chest, a mix of guilt and longing. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that there was a different way to live. But her responsibilities, her honor, her kingdom, could she truly turn her back on all of it for a future she couldn't yet see? The tension between them grew, but it was different now. It was no longer just about duty versus desire. It was about finding a way to balance both, to navigate a path that was hers to walk. But for now, the princess could only wonder if she was brave enough to take the first step. It was late in the evening when the princess found herself alone with the human once again. The sun had set, leaving only a faint glow on the horizon. She sat near a small campfire, the warm flames flickering in the cool night air. The human sat across from her, staring into the fire, his face cast in shadow. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The night felt still, almost too quiet, as if the world was waiting for something to happen. The princess hadn't expected to feel this, drawn to him. She had thought of him as nothing more than an obligation at first. But now, after spending so many days together, her feelings were beginning to change. She couldn't deny it any longer. There was something about him, something real and genuine, that she hadn't expected from a human. "I don't understand you," she said quietly, her voice soft but full of wonder. "You're nothing like the humans I've heard about. You're different." The human smiled, his eyes still focused on the fire. "I guess I'm just me," he said. "We're all a bit different in the end." The princess couldn't help but laugh, though it was a small, quiet sound. There was a truth to his words that she hadn't realized before. Humans, just like her people, weren't all the same. They were individuals, each one with their own story, their own emotions. She had been so quick to judge them, all based on what she had heard. How foolish she had been. "I was taught to see humans as weak," she continued, her voice carrying the weight of her upbringing. "I was told that your kind was nothing more than a primitive species, full of emotion and chaos." The human didn't react to her words with anger or offense. Instead, he simply nodded, as if he understood. "I guess that's what people say when they don't understand something. It's easier to make assumptions than to actually listen, right?" The princess paused, her heart racing. She had never really considered that before, how easy it was to judge others without truly trying to understand them. She had spent so much of her life hiding behind her title, her royal duties, that she had never really taken the time to connect with anyone, not even her own people. And now, here she was, beginning to see the human for who he really was, someone with depth, with a story, someone who might just be as lost as she felt. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She didn't know why she felt the need to apologize. But it seemed right. "I didn't mean to judge you so harshly." He looked up at her then, and for the first time, she saw the softness in his eyes, the kindness that had always been there, but she had failed to notice. "There's nothing to apologize for," he said. "We all make mistakes. The important thing is that we learn from them." The princess felt a lump form in her throat. It was strange, feeling this way. She had never been allowed to show weakness, to admit that she didn't have all the answers. But here, sitting by the fire with this human, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel the weight of her crown, the burden of her responsibilities pressing down on her. She just felt human. She looked at him, really looked at him for the first time, and something inside her shifted. This wasn't just the man she was supposed to marry. This was someone she could talk to, someone who understood her in a way that no one else ever had. Her heart fluttered, and she couldn't explain it. But in that moment, she knew things had changed between them. The walls she had built around her heart had started to crack, and she couldn't stop it. I think I'm starting to understand," she said, her voice barely audible. "Maybe I don't have to follow the path I've been told to follow. Maybe there's another way." The human smiled, his eyes warm. "I'm glad to hear that." And for the first time, the princess felt as if she was truly seen, not as a princess, not as a duty, but as a person. The princess walked through the quiet halls of the human settlement, her mind racing. She had spent so many days with the human, and every moment had left her more confused. The connection between them was undeniable, yet the weight of her duty still pressed down on her, suffocating her thoughts. She had never felt so torn before. Her entire life had been about duty. As a princess, she was raised to believe that her personal desires didn't matter. Everything was for the greater good. But now, with each passing day, she found herself questioning that belief. She couldn't deny how much she had come to care for the human. But what would that mean for her people, For her planet, she couldn't just ignore the responsibility she carried on her shoulders. She paused near a window, staring out at the vast landscape below. Earth was beautiful, full of life in ways she had never experienced. But it was also so different from her own world. Her people were focused on logic and efficiency, their society built on rules and expectations. Earth, in contrast, seemed so full of emotions and spontaneity. The human had shown her a side of life she had never even imagined. But could she really choose that life? Could she really abandon everything she had been taught to follow her heart? The thought terrified her. Princess. The voice broke her from her thoughts, and she turned to find one of her closest advisors standing in the doorway. The advisor, a trusted member of her royal court, had followed her from their home planet to Earth, and was always there to remind her of her duties. "We need to talk," the advisor said, stepping into the room. "The council has grown impatient. They are demanding your return. You can't keep ignoring your responsibilities." The princess felt a pang of guilt in her chest. She had known this was coming. The pressure from her people was building. She had been so focused on the human and the emotions that had begun to stir within her that she had neglected the very reason she was here, her duty to her people. "I know," she said quietly, her voice heavy. "But what about what I want? What about my choice?" The advisor's expression hardened. "You don't have the luxury of choice, princess. Your marriage to the human is a political move. It's not about you or him. It's about the future of our people. If you refuse to marry him, we risk the alliance with the humans. We risk everything." Her heart sank. She had known this, but hearing it from the advisor's lips made it feel so much more real. She wasn't just a princess. She was a symbol, a tool for her people's survival. "I don't know if I can do this anymore," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I can go through with it." The advisor's gaze softened, but there was still a firmness to it. "I understand your feelings. But sometimes, duty is more important than personal desires. You knew this when you were born. You were chosen for this role. Your people depend on you." The princess felt a lump form in her throat. She didn't want to let go of the human. She didn't want to ignore the connection they had built. But she also couldn't ignore the weight of her responsibilities. What if I want both?" she whispered, barely able to speak the words. The advisor didn't answer immediately. Instead, they simply gave her a long, knowing look. "You must decide quickly, princess. Your people are waiting for your decision." As the advisor left the room, the princess stood there, alone once again. She didn't know what to do. The path ahead was unclear, and she felt more lost than ever. Could she find a way to balance both her duty and her heart, or would she have to choose between the two? The struggle within her was growing stronger, and she didn't know how much longer she could hold it together. The princess sat in her chamber, the weight of the decision bearing down on her. She had spent the past few days in turmoil, unable to find peace. She had never felt so lost before. Her people, her duty, her future, it was all crashing down on her. The human, the man she had slowly come to care for, was waiting for her, but so were the demands of her kingdom. She was being torn in two directions, each one pulling harder than the other. Her advisor had visited her earlier that day, urging her to make a choice. The pressure from her people was becoming unbearable. They needed her to return to her planet, to marry the human, and to ensure the political alliance that would secure their future. If she didn't, the consequences would be disastrous. Her people would be vulnerable. She knew that. She couldn't let her selfish desires destroy everything her parents had worked for. But then there was the human. He had been nothing but kind to her, patient, and understanding of her struggles. He had shown her a side of life she had never known, one that was full of freedom and emotion, one that made her feel alive in a way she had never imagined. She wasn't just a princess to him. She was a person, a partner, someone he genuinely cared about. And yet, he had never pushed her. He had never forced her to make a decision. He had given her space to think, to choose. The princess stood up, pacing the room. Her mind was a storm of thoughts and emotions, each one conflicting with the other. She knew what was at stake, but she also knew what her heart was telling her. She could feel it deep within her chest, the pull to stay with him, to choose a life she had never dared to imagine. But could she really abandon everything? Could she walk away from her duty, her crown, her people? Suddenly, the door to her chamber opened, and the human stepped inside. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood there, watching her, his expression serious but not angry. She could see the concern in his eyes, the worry that she was struggling with a decision she had never been prepared to make. "I need to talk to you," the princess said, her voice shaky. "I've been thinking about everything." He stepped closer, his presence calming, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. "I know this is hard for you," he said softly. "I don't want to rush you. You need time. But you also need to decide what you want. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. Not for me. Not for anyone." Her heart swelled at his words. He was giving her a choice. He wasn't demanding anything from her. He wasn't trying to pressure her into marrying him. He was simply offering her a chance to choose her own path, to take control of her own future. The princess swallowed hard, feeling tears sting her eyes. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered. "I don't know if I can choose between you and my people." The human reached out, gently taking her hand. "I don't want to be the cause of your pain," he said quietly. "I just want you to be happy. I want you to choose a life that makes you feel whole. But if that life is with me, I'll be here, waiting." For a moment, the princess stood there, their hands entwined, feeling the warmth of his touch. It was so simple, yet it meant everything to her. She knew what she had to do. She knew that she couldn't keep living in fear of making the wrong choice. It was time to make a decision, to take a leap of faith. With a deep breath, the princess lifted her head, her gaze meeting his. "I don't know what the future holds," she said, her voice steady but full of emotion. "But I want to try. I want to try to build a future with you." The human's face lit up with relief and joy. He pulled her into a gentle embrace, holding her close. She knew that the road ahead would be difficult, and there would be challenges she couldn't predict. But for the first time, she felt a sense of peace settle in her heart. Together, they would face whatever came next, and for the first time in her life, the princess felt that she had made a choice that was truly her own. The decision had been made. The princess, though uncertain of every detail, had finally found a path that felt right. She was no longer just a princess bound by royal duties and the expectations of her people. She was a woman, standing beside the human she had come to care for, ready to forge a new future. But as they stood together, their hands clasped in a shared sense of resolve, the challenges were far from over. The princess knew her choice would not be easy. It had already cost her something precious, the respect of her people, perhaps even the future of her planet. And yet she couldn't help but feel a spark of hope. The human, the man she had once seen as an obligation, had become her ally in a way she had never imagined. Together, they could face what was coming. "I know this won't be easy," the princess said, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. "But we have to make them understand. We have to show my people that this alliance can be something more than just politics." The human nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I agree. This isn't just about us. It's about our worlds. If we're going to make this work, we need to find a way to bring our people together." The princess hesitated for a moment. She had been taught to believe that her people were above all others. Their strength, their way of life, their advanced technology. It had all been a source of pride. But now, standing beside this human, she saw the truth. Her people weren't invincible. They needed help just as much as anyone else. The universe was bigger than her world, and sometimes it took more than one species to survive. "We need to go to the council," the princess said, her voice firm now. "I have to explain my decision. I have to show them that this marriage, this alliance, can be the key to peace." The human smiled, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. "I'll be right there with you. We'll do this together." The princess felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. She had never imagined she could feel this way, not just about him, but about the possibility of change. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel alone. She had someone by her side, someone who was willing to stand with her, even against the pressures of her people. They made their way to the council chambers, where the leaders of her planet waited. The air was thick with tension as they entered the room, all eyes turning toward them. The princess felt the weight of their gazes, the judgment, the doubt, but she didn't flinch. She stood tall, her back straight, her heart resolute. "I know you have questions," the princess began, her voice echoing in the silent room. "But I ask that you listen to me. The alliance with the humans is not just a political move. It is the future of our people. I have made my choice, and I stand by it." There was a murmur among the council members. Some looked outraged, others uncertain. But the princess continued, her gaze steady as she addressed the room. "The human I have chosen to marry is not just a man. He represents a new future for us, one that embraces unity rather than division. Our people need to open their eyes. We cannot survive on our own. We need to work with others, with the humans and with other species, to ensure our future." The human stepped forward, standing beside her. "We're not enemies," he said, his voice calm and strong. "We're allies. We can help each other. But it starts with understanding, with respect." The room fell silent. The council members exchanged glances, and for a long moment, no one spoke. The princess held her breath, unsure of what would come next. Then, slowly, one of the council members spoke. "Perhaps we have been too quick to judge. Perhaps it is time for us to consider another path." The princess felt a flicker of hope in her chest. It wasn't over yet, but it was a start. An alliance that had once seemed impossible was now within reach, and for the first time, she felt the future, her future, become something she could shape, something she could fight for. Together, they would change the course of their worlds. The days following the council meeting felt like a blur. The princess had left the room with a sense of cautious optimism, knowing that their words had planted a seed of doubt in the minds of the council members. But the journey was far from over. The council had agreed to reconsider the alliance, but their approval was not yet a certainty. Her people, raised on the ideals of self-sufficiency and superiority, would not easily accept a union with the humans. It was a change that would take time. The princess found herself pacing her chamber, anxiety creeping up on her. She was so used to living by rules, by the expectations of her family and her people. The thought of defying them completely felt like walking a tightrope, each step carrying the weight of her kingdom's future. The human had been with her through every moment, offering support, but there was still a part of her that doubted her decision. Would her people truly accept her choice? Would they understand that this marriage wasn't just about politics or personal gain? Or would they see it as a betrayal of everything they stood for? A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She turned, quickly wiping away the thoughts swirling in her mind. "Come in," she called. The human stepped inside, his face tired but kind. He had been working with her every day, helping her prepare for the final meeting with the council. The moment of truth was fast approaching, and she could see the uncertainty in his eyes as well. "I know this isn't easy," he said quietly, "but we've come so far. Whatever happens, I'm with you. You've already shown so much strength." The princess felt a lump form in her throat. His words meant more to her than she had ever expected. "I don't know if I'm strong enough to carry all of this," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I feel like I'm walking into a storm, and I don't know if I'll make it through." The human stepped closer, offering a reassuring smile. "You don't have to carry it alone. You've got me, and you've got your people, even if they don't fully understand it yet. They'll see in time. This is your decision, and I'll support you no matter what." Her heart warmed at his words, and for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could do this. She wasn't alone. The future was still uncertain, but it was hers to shape. "I don't want to fail them," she said softly. "I don't want to lose my people over something they don't understand." "You're not failing them," he replied. "You're leading them. And sometimes, leading means showing them a new way. They'll follow you because they trust you." The princess took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her decision settle in her chest. It was true. She wasn't just following the path others had set for her anymore. She was forging her own path, one that combined her duty to her people with the love she had found with the human. The council would meet again soon, and this time, she would not just defend her choice, she would stand by it, with the confidence of someone who had finally understood that her people's future didn't have to be built on old traditions alone. Change was possible, even if it was hard. "Let's go," she said, her voice firm. "It's time to show them what we can do together." Together, they walked out of the chamber, side by side, ready to face whatever came next. The princess was no longer the girl who had been forced into a marriage. She was a woman who had chosen her path, a path that would change everything. And no matter the outcome, she knew that the decision was hers, and she would not regret it. The council chamber was filled with a tense silence. The princess stood at the front, her heart racing in her chest. The human stood beside her, a quiet support that she had come to rely on. Today was the day that would determine everything. The day her people would either accept her choice or reject it. She had never felt more vulnerable in her life, yet also more determined. She knew this wasn't just about her. It was about the future of her people, the future of two worlds that, until now, had been so different. But that was changing. This marriage was more than a union. It was a bridge between her people and the humans, a chance for peace, for understanding, and for growth. The princess took a deep breath, lifting her head high as the council members watched her, their faces a mixture of curiosity, skepticism, and fear. She had fought so hard for this moment. But now that it was here, her voice faltered slightly. Still, she pressed on. "Esteemed members of the council," she began, her voice steady despite the uncertainty in her heart. "I stand before you today not just as your princess, but as someone who has made a choice for peace, for unity, and for a future that can be shared between our people and the humans." There was a murmur among the council members, some nodding, others shaking their heads in disbelief. But the princess continued, unwavering. "I know that this marriage, this alliance, is difficult for many of you to accept. We have always valued our independence, our way of life. But the world is changing. Our people cannot remain isolated forever. We need to evolve, to grow. And sometimes, that means reaching across the divide to others, even if they are different from us." The human beside her gave a small nod, his hand resting on her shoulder, offering her strength in the quietest of ways. She knew that his presence here, standing beside her as an equal, was a symbol of everything they had fought for. The princess turned her gaze to the council, her eyes meeting each member's in turn. "This is not a decision I made lightly. I have thought about it for days, weeks. I have weighed the future of our people, and I believe this is the only way forward. We must not be afraid of change. We must embrace it." One of the council members, an older woman with a stern face, stood up. "But your marriage to this human will bring us into their world," she said, her voice sharp. "What guarantee do we have that this alliance will not lead to our downfall? Our people are strong. We have no need for outside interference." The princess stepped forward, meeting the council members' gaze. "Our strength has always been in our unity, not in isolation. The human and I may come from different worlds, but we both understand what it means to fight for our people. We both understand the need for peace, for trust. We have already begun to build that bridge, and I ask you to trust me. Trust that this is the right path." For a long moment, there was only silence in the room. The princess held her breath, waiting for the council's response, knowing that her future, and the future of her people, hung in the balance. Finally, the older woman sat down, her expression unreadable. Another council member, A younger man stood up next. "I believe in your vision, Princess. Perhaps it's time for us to take that step forward as well." The room fell quiet once again, but this time, the silence felt different. It felt like a shift, a turning point. Slowly, other members of the council began to nod in agreement, one by one. It wasn't a unanimous decision. Some still looked doubtful, unsure of the path ahead. But the princess had made her case, and for the first time, she felt that the walls between her people and the humans were beginning to crumble. The princess turned to the human, a soft smile tugging at her lips. "We've done it," she whispered. "We've shown them." He smiled back, his eyes filled with pride. This is just the beginning. And it was. The road ahead would be long and filled with challenges, but they would face it together. The princess had made her choice, and it had been the right one. She wasn't just a princess anymore. She was a leader, a symbol of change, a beacon of hope for both her people and the humans. As the council members began to speak amongst themselves, the princess knew that this was only the start of something new. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, she felt ready to embrace it.